So imagine that this AI moment started less than 2 years ago, and already we are here thinking hard about teaching and learning in AI. Let's give ourselves a hand for making sure that we are leaning into these technologies. My name is Jeff Livingston. I lead the team at EdSolutions, and I'm a founder of the Center for Education Market Dynamics. One of the great blessings of my life is that Meisha Porter and Andrea Foggy-Paxton take my phone calls, let alone agree to appear with me on a stage. Now, at a conference that is about fundamentally a technology revolution, I thought it was important that people who are not known for being techies, but are known,
got Tinder greens too,
are known for being the kinds of people who care deeply about teaching and learning, care deeply about students of all communities, had the opportunity to talk about what these technologies might mean from an equity perspective. And because I know that there are technologists in this room, I know that there are technologists who are going to watch this recording, and I know that there are technologists who are going to hear from you what we talked about today. I have asked each of these incredible women to both introduce themselves and speak directly to the technologists from your perspective about how we make sure that AI is something that the communities we live in and work in do and not become something we watch get done to us. Andrea, if you will start.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Foggy-Paxton. I have a couple roles, the first being the founder of the Social Studies Accelerator and Entrepreneur in Residence at Education Leaders of Color, and also the Los Angeles County School Board. And so a lot of the work that I have done has been around how do we solve for the issues of preparing young people for the future. And I have worked in ed tech. I have supported the ed tech portfolio at a national foundation. And at the center of it has always been, what does the user need and how do we have the user involved in the design process? And that is why I'm excited about this conversation today, because even in the Social Studies Accelerator, as we try to develop content that is reflective of the diverse communities in our schools, we know that AI tools are being used, and we know that there is bias oftentimes in some of these tools. We want to make sure that not only are students prepared to understand how to be historians, how to understand what is fact versus fiction, we also want teachers to be able to do that as well. So that is why I'm here today, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Meisha.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Meisha Porter. I'm the president and CEO of the Bronx Community Foundation. Really excited to be here. Yes, I'm always going to represent the BX. Everybody knows that. Yes, Los, I see you, my brother. You know, I think the starting point, the conversation that you raised, we all come from communities where things happen to us or happen to the students that we serve. And I think for me, what I want the folks creating and developing these technologies to think about is, whose language are we adopting? Whose voice are we adopting? And in this great world of teaching and learning where we speak so much about student agency and student voice, where's the voice of students? They're moving faster than us in this time of creating. And so I wonder how we are including students in the co-creation of these tools, because we want to make sure that what we're preparing them for are the jobs that have not yet been created.
So you both know me well enough to know that the following is true. If ChatGPT and Claude by Anthropic and Gemini had existed in 1985, I would have been the happiest 14-year-old Black nerd on earth. I would have been translating the Old Testament into Asante Tree. My mother would have had to drag me out of the house to get sunlight. I would have forgotten to eat. I would have been so happy. But in 1985, I knew I was weird. And I know I'm still weird, but I sometimes think that if I lived in Palo Alto, I might forget I was weird because everybody else is weird in the same way. And people who are weird like me seem sometimes to think that students want to learn from a machine and not a person. Now, while that would have made me happy, both my younger brothers would have called that torture. So while I know, Andrea, you lead the Social Studies Accelerator, and I know, Dr. Porter, you lead the Bronx Community Foundation, I also know that, Meisha, you were chancellor of the New York City Public Schools, and Andrea, you are now a school board member of the LA County Public Schools. So what is it that you think students who are not weird like me might want to do with AI once we get beyond the tutors?
I think you're pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
And you probably were pretty cool then. You just didn't know it.
Okay.
I think a couple of things. First, I think what we learned in the pandemic was that 21st century learning wasn't one thing. It wasn't about the tech tool. It wasn't about what the teacher would do. It wasn't about what the student would do. It was actually about the collective of what those three things would do together. And so I think what young people want is they want to be able to engage with technologies, interact with their peers in person, learn from a person, but also have a level of independence that these tools can provide them with. And so I don't have great fear about teachers being replaced because we learned very much about the importance of human connection when we were so disconnected. However, my fear is that our adult fears will prevent us from actually building 21st century learning communities that bring all of those people and tools together. And so to make that happen, we have to make sure, same thing I said before, young people are part of co-creating what those schooling experiences look like and feel like, and that we are preparing and training and equipping teachers with the tools to do amazing things so we can have these real interactive classrooms.
I can't say that I disagree. I think that students want a classroom where they feel they can be themselves, that they can learn and explore things that interest them. So the technology component enables that. You know, I have a 10-year-old fifth grader who learns all kinds of information on his own that I'm always checking. How do you know that's true? Did you check the source?
Right.
And so I think our schools have to be prepared for students to be self-learners and be able to apply that knowledge in the classroom, whether it's project-based learning, individual projects, but the technology is an enabler for that personalization and that support that students may need to have that engagement, not only with their teacher, but with their peers. So I go to visit classrooms. The most exciting classrooms that I see are when the students are able to engage with one another around the content and with the teacher in a dynamic way, where they're not just sitting there learning from a chalkboard when they're actually doing something together to solve a problem. And that's where I think technology can enable that.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing?
Please,
I
please.
went to the Sphere in Vegas. Has anybody been to the Sphere? And what I said when I was there with the group I was with, we just traveled around the world together and never left the room. We just saw different parts of the world. We engaged with other cultures. And I think it's that type of learning that we need to bring into classrooms so that collectively we're connecting, engaging, and thinking about a world and cultures and experiences that are beyond our own. And we have these powerful tools that can help us do that.
I think that's absolutely right. I was thinking recently about my time as an instructional materials publisher. You both know that I'm a recovering educational publisher. Two, I had a conversation almost 15 years ago in South Florida when I was trying to sell a math intervention program. And the chief academic officer I was speaking to said to me, you know, Jeff, I really like this, but I actually need it in Haitian Creole. And I said, there are probably only about 400 people on earth who could translate this into Haitian Creole successfully. It would cost me $2 million and take me 9 months to get this translated. But I could do it on my phone with 3 different programs, walking back to the hotel now, and do, you know, a 75% job of doing that translation. That means that cultural relevance is possible in a detailed way that would have been ridiculous when I was publishing in math and in literacy. Andrea, in your work at the Social Studies Accelerator in particular, I know that you try to get the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves to get better. And I know that you are trying to broaden the number of communities who see themselves in materials. What do the entrepreneurs you work with think about these technologies and the ability to do that?
I'm glad you asked that. We have a great partnership with Common Good to develop an AI tool to create efficiency in that process of how do you localize material so that the communities that are reflected in the student population show up in the content. And that requires input from the community. And oftentimes that takes a lot of time because you're having conversations, you're gathering information, you have to synthesize it. So Common Good is developing a tool that we're beta testing with some content developers now to understand how we can do that process more efficiently and still get the same quality outcome. So we're embracing it as a way to develop the content in a much more efficient way and to be responsive to the communities that students don't really see right now in the materials that they're using.
I think that's wonderful that more and more communities will get to see themselves in the materials, and that connection will lead to better student outcomes.
That's right.
And you know, Dr. Porter, I know a few things about the Bronx. I live in Harlem. I know you've forgiven me for that. But,
Okay.
I know that the Bronx is one of the most diverse places on earth.
Yeah.
That two adults meeting in the Bronx are more than likely meeting someone who grew up speaking a different language or from a different culture than not. What in a diverse place like the Bronx do you see as the future for AI in teaching and learning?
I mean, I think some of the things that you all have both talked about, first of all, I was also a principal in the Bronx. Favorite job in the whole wide world was being a principal. And, you know, I think about when students would come to me from other places, from African countries where we didn't have tools to communicate with their families, and they were the main communicators, right? And so you can empower young people with tools that allow them to be young and students, but also allow them to be creators of tools to help their families. So I think there's just, you know, translation, support, communication, ways that we can engage differently. I think, you know, just all of the communities and cultures represented, there's just a great entry point for that. One of the problems in the Bronx, though, is up to 40% of Bronxites don't have access to high-speed, high-quality internet. And so another part of this story has to be about access, right? Because I am gonna date and age myself. I'm hip-hop years old. If you know what that means, you know what it is. But those of us who are hip-hop years old, we went to school with number 2 pencils. And if you from the places I'm from, you needed a pencil sharpener. And if you didn't have a pencil sharpener, it took a lot to get that pencil to work, right? And so not having access is a barrier to being able to even be at the point of innovation. So first we have to solve the access problem, and at the same time, we have to make sure that we are creating the space for innovation to happen in the Bronx.
I think that's true. I think there's a new and special access problem right now, too.
Yeah.
I have spoken to some of the educators here who've told me that they have used GPT or they have used Claude, but they've only used the free version.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I'm aware that the future is here, but it costs $20 a month. And for most of the people in this room, $20 a month is not very much. But Andrea, I'm betting there are a lot of families in LA County for whom $20 a month is a lot, and the same is true in the Bronx. How can we make sure that the experience of AI is a real cutting-edge experience of AI for all students, not just for the ones who come from families who can afford the latest LLMs?
Yeah, it's a great question. Number one is helping teachers understand how to use it, right? Because the kids are going to use it regardless if we teach them. Guarantee you that. Number two is providing access. And there are many districts who are starting to really examine what does that mean for both students and teachers. So what are the policies? So there's equity and access, so that it's not just the free version that teachers and students have access to, but that it is a real meaningful way that is embedded in the classroom experience. So helping support teachers and then providing access for both teachers and students to be able to use the tool. Those are two critical things that have to happen at a district and for us in some situations county, because we do actually run schools and educational programs.
Yeah, and I graduated to the $20 version. I'm really proud of myself.
Good. I'm proud of you too.
But the fact of the matter, it is the cost of a very expensive textbook to provide that access to every student in the K-12 system. It's simply that. And so it may feel, it is costly to community, but it's not costly when you think about what we have to provide students. And if we think about what are the tools that every young person should have, regardless of zip code or neighborhood. And the fact of the matter is, you notice from your former life, it is the cost of an expensive textbook. And so let's solve it. Like, let's just solve it. Let's make it a part of the story. Let's make it a part of access for teachers, for students, and let's make it part of our teaching tools.
I agree. I think you both will agree with me too, as I say that there are people at the cutting edge of these AI technologies who purport loudly and often to be about making sure these technologies create a better world for all of us. Making the best models available at an affordable rate is a way to make real that promise. And so anybody here who hears someone say that, please say to them that maybe having the best LLMs available in the Bronx, in LA, in Zimbabwe, in Mexico, is really the way to democratize these things. Finally, I want to talk, if I could, about how the educators in this room can lean in further for themselves. At this conference last year, I had a conversation with someone you both know who has made me promise not to say her name, where she was speaking several times about AI and quoted me 3 out of 4 times that she was speaking. And I pulled her aside and I said, you don't quote me 3 out of 4 times about anything else. I think this might be because you haven't leaned in yourself. Mm-hmm. Let me show you this. Yeah. There are people here who think that coming to understand how these LLMs work is the same as understanding how to program in Python, but it's not. What advice would you give to educators in this room who have personally touched AI for the first time today about their journey of leaning in and really coming to understand the promise of these technologies?
Yeah. Well, I will say, if you just touched it for the first time today, you're probably surprised at the ease of use. So that's the first thing I would say. But if you haven't touched it yet, don't be afraid. And, you know, I think that often in systems, we don't move things that we're afraid of. And so don't be afraid. Bring a partner along with you. Tap somebody else in, because this is the wave of the future. And if we wait until we figure this all out, there's going to be something new to figure out. But there are so many opportunities in this moment, and our children, the students we serve, deserve for us to be equipped so that we can equip them as well.
Yes, I love that. And there's lots of great opportunities. AI EDU provides lots of free webinars on how to incorporate it in your classroom. I also think there's probably some developers here who are looking for teacher advisors, looking for people to co-design, pilot tools, get feedback. I'm a true believer that if a teacher and a student isn't involved in the design process, it's probably not going to meet the intended need. And so in addition to leveraging it in your classroom, think about being part of the solution of what is needed. What is needed in the classroom? How do you work with the designers of these tools to make sure that it meets the needs of your students?
Thank you. I would also add to what they have said that if you are in this room today as an educator and you go to these booths and see the wonderful things that are being done, offer yourself.
Yeah.
Offer yourself as a tester. Offer yourself as a beta tester. Let's make sure that none of the organizations here have the excuse of not being able to reach an educator who wants to do it. Be the educator in the room. Be the human who helps us to adapt these things for our classrooms and our students. Please join me in thanking my dear friends, Dr. Meisha Porter and Andrea Foggy-Paxton, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.